Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are tuned into Sustainability Summit 2022. I hope you have been tuned into the rigorous conversations that we've been having since morning. This is the last panel for the day, as sponsored by United Nations Global Compact. Without wasting any more time, our facilitator for the segment is Elizabeth Anna Recht, who is a global lead under the Target Gender Equality at the United Nations Global Compact. Over to you, Elizabeth. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you so much, and thank you for inviting the Global Compact to organize this so important session here today, where we will be talking about gender equality, not just in theory, but in practice, with the many different tools and resources out there that your organization could start using right away to really take action and raise the ambition for this topic. But before we get started, I first wanted to hand it over to one of my colleagues around the world from Tanzania here, who is the CEO of Unleashed Africa Ventures and is a part of the Global Compact Network in Tanzania. Kalila has been raising the bar for gender equality in many, many different roles and capacity, as creative director, as CEO, of course, as social entrepreneur, innovator, and so on. But without further ado, I'll pass it over to Kalila to really set the scene us here today and underline why it is so important that we are focusing on this topic and how to become activists in our different roles and organizations. Kalila, over to you, and thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you so much, Elizabeth, and hello, everybody. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, whatever time you're going to watch this in the future or wherever you are in the world. First and foremost, I'm going to start with a quote from Dr. Joyce Banda, who is the former president of Malawi. And she says, "Leaders are born, yet many born female in rural parts of sub-Saharan Africa go unrecognized, largely because from day one, women and girls face a political, cultural, and social environment that inhibits their development into well-equipped female leaders." Right? I'm going to read that again. Leaders are born, yet many go unrecognized, largely because, yet many born female go largely unrecognized because from day one, women and girls face political, cultural, social environments that inhibit their development into well-equipped female leaders. So hello, everybody. As introduced, my name is Khalila Sandramboy. I am a young African woman who is passionately driven and purposely committed to being at the forefront of her people's change journey. I am a human being who has, even though climbed the career ladder and managed to do so much, I have also, as a female, faced abuse, bullying, and condescending realities in the workplace and outside the workplace. When people hear me speak, many do what we often do when we attempt to broad brush stroke people into these little safe boxes of perception that live in our minds. They think she's young, she's articulate, sounds literate, is speaking on this panel, so she must have had all of the opportunities in the world. Look at her, she's an example of us moving in the right direction, right? So allow me to share 4 stories that marked my journey. 1, entry level, there I was, and I was asked how much I wanted to earn. I was 19 years old. I was young, naive about pay grades, but extremely bright and capable. I was also excruciatingly shy. I mean, you couldn't tell considering, but I was excruciatingly shy, and I was fighting a crippling inferiority complex that was brought about by an upbringing that I dare not go through and in this session. I was struggling to fit in, but could not vocalize the choking anxiety that I face on a daily basis. Peer pressure and the need for validation did to me what it now does to millions of girls and young women who enter the workspace, especially when they get that offer letter. Interviewed by a male director, placed under a male manager who, well, he, bless his soul, he cursed every single day. And him cursing me was his way of motivating me to do great work. Sent to a male HR personnel, supervised by a female manager who couldn't care less about my mental and emotional well-being. Years later, in a different office and industry, higher positions later, I walked into an office at 8 p.m. because I had to get some work done. My director at that time was in the office. I walked in to say hello. What he did, he proceeded to pulled me closer, grabbed me provocatively. I was scared. I was trembling, and I shook it off. And he kept saying, oh, it was just a joke. Days later, I had to quit because I feared for my well-being. I did not have a plan B. I had children and a family to take care of, but I feared getting raped in the office because there was nobody to hear me out. There was nobody I could tell, and everybody I talked to said that I was being too emotional. Years later, in another different role, I faced head-wrenching, gut-churning sabotage from women in my place of work. Apparently because I was making them too uncomfortable, I was too ethical, and I refused to conform. That was a problem. In another instance, I was ridiculed by both men and women for refusing to sexually bribe a potential client simply because that's the way it's done. And this potential client, may I share, was from a firm that was championing gender equality. I refused to go to bed with this person, and that led me to, again, having to quit working in this space. This is an example of 4 different workspaces that I had to leave because then, one way or the other, my being female was dangerous for me in those areas. The stories we could tell are plenty. There are plenty more, I'm sure. We have heard all the panels, we can have all the panels we want to have, but unless we address the following key issues, we will be here year in, year out, talking about how it's going to take generations to bridge the gender gap in the workplace and outside the workplace. 1, here are a few ideas that I have from my experience, not only facing these issues, but also driving change in the workplace. These are some issues that I think we have to think critically about. 1, it's about humanity, mindset. We talk about mindset all the time. We talk about how it's necessary to address mindsets holding us back. And yet mindset transformative programs are little to non-existent. It is easier to fund a program that tackles eye-level indicators, something that you can tick in the box. But then how do you approach mindset change how do you approach mindset change in the workplace? At Girl Effect, which is a company that I direct here in Tanzania, we use social behavioral change science to drive mindset change activities on ground, taking young girls and women on a journey from, am I truly worthy? To I am unworthy, to am I truly worthy, to I can do this. Here we work tirelessly to creatively address and research cultural norms and beliefs among women and their gatekeepers. It is an actual science and it works. It's important for us to work together to invest in and champion such interventions. Second, startups. These conversations must be had not only among organizations or companies that have gotten to a certain level, but we should have this conversation with startups. Right now in Africa, we have a bulging wave of startups and young people self-employing. But then we must involve them in the conversations because these startups are the future giants, right, on the continent. Now, if we're waiting for them to reach a certain profit threshold to start having these conversations, then we're a little too late. Then what that means is we're recycling the problem for the next generations. We must have these conversations at startup levels. They must be involved. The women empowerment principles that are part of the UN Global Compact must be embedded in companies and organizations from idea stage, early stage to growth stage. So we must capture them now. 3, we must leverage technology to scale solutions to reach the unreached and prepare them to succeed in the workplaces. Lastly, we have these conversations in the cities. We have these conversations in the urban and peri-urban spaces. We must tap into those who are not in the spaces because there are enterprises there as well. 4, we must build contextualized solutions. Understand your target, context and nuances, and build accordingly. Most of the times we have solutions that we find online and we try to replicate them in our organization and in our spaces. And what happens? They fail. Why? Because we are misdiagnosing the actual problems in our specific areas, right? We must customize solutions and programs for our people. Just because it worked somewhere else doesn't mean it will work for you. I call this KYP, know your people. We must also remain grounded. What happens normally when we climb these various career ladders? It's very hard to connect to the plight of the people on ground, those who we are trying to create solutions for. That entry-level Kels who came in and was afraid to speak out. That mid-manager Kels who wants to run somewhere, find someone to talk to. But if we don't connect with her plight, then how can we create a solution for her? We must work with her to create the solution. Separation from actual issues leads to a sharp misdiagnosis of actual issues on ground, and we end up with misplaced solutions. So it's important to connect to people. If you lack the ability to do so, effectively connect with those who can connect for you. Use data, leverage evidence and insights to inform decisions. We must also destroy silos and make sure that we are building in partnerships. Media and content. Most of the times we have these conversations and we don't involve people who are consistently driving the way our young people, the people in our workspaces, both women and men think. Media is a massive mindset creator. But what's happening now, we're in the space having this conversation, but the media houses, the media channels that are largely driving the concepts that are creating and framing mindsets are not driving this agenda as well. And if you look at stats, I don't have time to share them right now. What's happening is we are driving completely different conversations, right? So how can we make sure that the media is part of this conversation? Another thing is representation. Representation does not mean transformation. Just because we have women in high levels in our companies do not necessarily mean they have the skills, the mindsets, and the courage to drive change. So we must also think about how can we talk courage, creativity, and purpose when we're not just recruiting, but building capabilities within our organizations. Lastly, we must focus on building safe spaces. So I'm going to ask you to ask yourself in this space, can your colleague truly come to you with an issue? What kind of relationship do you have with the people in your workspace and vice versa? Do you feel safe? Can you right now go into your workspace and start an uncomfortable conversation about safety? We must build this, have these uncomfortable conversations about safety. We must intentionally allow ourselves and challenge ourselves to also become the safe space. A safe space is not a physical area, center, a physical space. A safe space is within each and every single one of us, right? So we must intentionally, from managers, for both managers and direct reports, for both managers and direct reports, we must intentionally become those safe spaces. We must connect past the to-do lists and really look at how we can connect intrinsically, right? So that's really about being intentional. The role each of us as individuals have is to be intentional about living and leaving a legacy of transformation. Do not conform to the status quo. We must realize that gender equality is not about women becoming like men or about a competition of genders, but about humanity as a whole. Be part of something greater than yourself. Imagine a world where our daughters can look back and say, I truly had the opportunity and support to live out my potential, unafraid and unrestrained, because we stood up for something real, challenged each other to have the uncomfortable conversations, and took courage to make sure we are building the programs that truly connected to context. Thank you, everybody. My name is Halila Sandramboy. I am the founding director of Unleashed Africa Social Ventures and the country director of Girl Effect. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak with you all. And I truly believe that if we purpose to do it, we can truly create programs and solutions that answer the issues on ground, rather than have these cookie cutter solutions that will take us nowhere. There's 200 and whatever years to bridge the gender gap. We can limit that and minimize that if we're truly intentional about doing what it takes. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. There were so many different ideas in there. And I think the main point really is that we shouldn't aspire for anything less, but just creating truly transformational practices and systems that allow gender equality to finally be a reality. There's 5 points I'll quickly repeat here just to sum up the great different points that Kalila made. The first one being, it's not about just a single person holding this area in a company or a CEO signing something and that's it. It's really about transforming systems, practices, policies, absolutely everything, and getting everyone on board within the company and outside. And what you really also mentioned, what resonated with me, which we always repeat in Target Gender Equality too, is representation doesn't mean equality. It's really not about numbers, but about underlying systems and truly changing workplace culture and culture in our societies. The other point you made was that it's about working with people. So again, gender equality is nothing to be solved by women and themselves, but rather getting all genders on board to create the change we need. Another point was that regardless of your size or location, you can and must play a role in this. It doesn't matter how many employees you have, how little or much, you have a role to play and the responsibility to do so. Another point you made also was the part around science and KPIs and tracking. So again, not coming up with cookie cutter solutions, as Kalila said in the end, but rather tracking your progress, measuring what's happening and seeing what actually works for your context. And lastly, innovation, to come up with new ideas and solutions of doing so. And if something works, scale it and ensure others can learn from your lessons and your mistakes as well. Thank you so much, Kalila, for setting the stage so well. We have many other speakers here today, which will really hopefully translate what you have been saying here and sharing with us how they've been applying these lessons across their different contexts. I will introduce them each one by one as we get to the different parts in our session here today. As here you'll see the agenda. We just heard our opening remarks from Kalila. And right now, Cecilia from BSR and myself will run you through a few different resources and tools that you can apply in your own company context right away in order to make sure you drive gender equality from the top throughout, getting everyone on board and measuring your progress throughout. We'll then hop in a panel discussion with 3 representatives from 3 different countries, from Kenya, South Africa, and Tanzania, to dive into different company lessons. And lastly, end with a call to action from Dr. Felengende. As said, I will introduce each speaker as we go through the session. And for now, introduce Cecilia, who is a colleague from BSR managing the diversity, equity, and inclusion portfolio there, working with many different clients all around the world, and being able to use their lessons and share them with you as well. And BSR has been a partner for us in using the WEBS and developing the WEBS gender gap analysis tool, which we'll go through in a second. Before I get started, a quick word on the United Nations Global Compact, as I know many here in the audience today might not be familiar with us. We are a part of the UN system and were launched by Kofi Annan with the mission to put a human face to the global market. By now, a bit over 20 years later, we have over 16,000 companies that are members of the Global Compact. And we will make sure to, in the expo area of this event and many other channels, share the different links on how you can become a member as well. So what different resources, tools, initiatives are we promoting here, and speakers here today have been using themselves to advance gender equality? The first ones are the Women's Empowerment Principles, which are a set of principles that actually Kalila mentioned during her presentation here in the beginning as well. So this is really about ensuring top leadership commitment for gender equality. It's a set of principles that is a joint initiative between us, the Global Compact, and UN Women to provide a framework to business to advance gender equality in the workplace, marketplace, and community. By now, close to 7,000 CEOs around the world have signed these principles. It's 7 principles in many different areas, and I'll go through them one by one in a second. And how you join is that your CEO signs a statement of support, and you simply upload it on the WEBS webpage on webs.org, and committing you to advance gender equality in the workplace, marketplace, and community. By signing, you don't have to have perfect practices right away, be a leader in every single area, but rather you're committing to advance these areas in the future and to take gender equality seriously, first and foremost. The first principle is about high-level corporate leadership. So about ensuring women's voices are heard and included on the decision-making tables throughout, whether it's your leadership team or the board, for example. Principle 2 talks about non-discrimination. So for example, in the hiring cycle, in the promotion cycle, ensuring there is no bias happening in any stage across your different systems. Principle 3 is about health, safety, and well-being of all workers, including females. So it's not only about physical health, but also about sexual harassment, violence, mental health, and well-being, ensuring women have their different resources and places available for them to be working mothers and, for example, breastfeed at their place of work, and many other different aspects that fall under this. Principle 4 is something that usually companies relate to the easiest right away, as it's about training and professional development, mentorship opportunities, for example, but ensuring they actually benefit everyone and all genders, and that anyone has access to different opportunities out there. Principle 5 now talks about the marketplace. So not only what am I doing in my company walls, but rather out there in the marketplace with both my different actors in my supply chain, but also, for example, my consumers that receive my marketing material. The question there is always, am I including or using different stereotypes in my marketing efforts and communications? How can I eliminate those and rather use positive ones instead? Or what's happening in my supply chain? Are women empowered there? How many women entrepreneurs am I sourcing from? So many different questions to get the conversation started in this area. Another area is the community and advocacy efforts. So am I using my voice as company leader, as employee, to speak up for gender equality wherever and whenever I can? Or for my philanthropic efforts and donations that many organizations are active in, do they benefit women or women rights organizations out there, for example? Or how am I engaging in different partnerships? And lastly, am I measuring my progress and publicly reporting on it in a sex desegregated way? Meaning making sure I'm actually tracking if different things I'm doing affect or benefit women in an equal way as do to other genders. So I know I ran through many different topics here just as a note. The women's empowerment principles really are a very holistic set of principles touching on so many different areas out there. And that signing these really is a top leadership statement to society out there that your organization is serious about gender equality. It's free to sign and simple by just going on webs.org on that webpage. There's many other resources available on the webpage as well that you can simply download and start using, such as policy templates, for example, to help get you started. As I said, there's so many different topics within the web. So that's why we actually created a web's gender gap analysis tool to help you assess where your organization stands on gender equality, how that tool works, and how you even tonight can simply log on and start using the tool already. So Cecilia, over to you, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth, for having me. And I'd like to go back to what Kalila also said. So commitment only takes you that far. And that's where the web's gender gap analysis tool comes in. This is really an opportunity for you to go from commitment to actual implementation, measurement, and performance. The tool is available online. It's free for everyone to use. You do not have to be a UNGC member or anything. You can go online and use the tool right now, as Elizabeth said. The tool is based on the women's empowerment principles, and it is a very holistic tool. It requires you to work across different teams to gather information, for example, from your procurement team, from your D&I team, from your product and research development teams, because it's touching upon so many different aspects of where women are in your value chain. So not only in the workplace and the corporate sphere, where we often talk about women's empowerment, but in the communities and in the marketplace, as Elizabeth also mentioned. The tool here, very simple. You go on the website. On the website, highly recommend you to read more about, because there are so many resources on how you can understand the tool better. There are, of course, reading about the women's empowerment principles. There are a lot of business cases for gender equality, some relevant resources, and there's also a great section about frequently asked questions in case you have any questions when you are starting to using the actual tool. Good. As soon as you come into and sign in, you make an account. So there's one person who's a focal point for your company. You sign in and you have an opportunity to view the scores of your company. You can have a corporate headquarter, so you can see it from very corporate global level, or you can also have subsidiaries going in and taking the tool. And as that focal person, as you would be, you have the opportunity to see the scores throughout of your company. For instance, here we have company Y, who scored as in the beginner stage of 22%. You can see here that you will be able to see previous scores. So if you, as we highly recommend, take the tool on an annual or biannual basis, you will be able to see the progress that you're doing, really showcase how all your time and commitment has helped you improve on your scoring. Same goes with subsidiaries. When you go into the tool, you also have an opportunity to download a PDF of all the questions you would go through. So you can already see before starting to filling out this tool, what are the questions you would need to answer, and start getting that into an Excel file and making sure that people are aware of what is needed. So this is where you really work together with, for example, your procurement team or your D&I team or your HR team to get all the answers that is needed within the tool. So the tool is very simple in that it's divided into 4 themes. It is leadership and strategy, workplace, marketplace, and community. So that's really what makes it holistic. And as Elizabeth also mentioned, on top of that, so within all of these different themes, within all the questions, we've made sure that integrate 4 management stations. So we have the commitment, and that just only takes us, a bit of the way. We also need to look into the implementation, the measurement, and the transparency as well. So for all of the 18 questions that are within the tool, you will see questions related to 4 of these 4 management stages that you would have to fill out. And this is really how you will get your results that you help you improve. You can see here that it is across the 4 themes that we just mentioned before, and it is color-coded in the sense that you can see where and help you prioritize where you should start all your efforts. This company, for instance, answered that they have not done anything on violence, harassment, and sexual exploitation. So it's an obvious lift, anything or where you score low in the tool. So it's really an opportunity for you to prioritize some of your actions and starting to develop to become better. It has to be said, this tool, a lot of it's very holistic. It's a very ambitious tool. So the tool is not to bash you in the head and say you're not doing well. It's an opportunity to you for improvement. Most of the average scores are within, the global average score is within the improver category, I think around 32%, meaning that that's where companies are. We only see 4% on the actual leadership category, and that's because the tool is ambitious. So there are so many opportunities for you to see areas of improvement. Within all of these questions, you will be able to see the multiple choices that actually provide you a bit of a roadmap of what can you do, what action can you take, and then, of course, tailor it to your company so it makes sense as well. And then lastly, we have this global trends report that we published this year in 2022, International Women's Day, where you can see the global progress so far. 2,682 companies have currently taken the tool. And as you see here, it's widespread across the world of companies actually taking it. And the overall score is very similar across all of the different regions. It is also a tool that is applicable whether you are a company of 250 plus employees or a micro or an SME. It really covers so much that it's applicable for everyone and is very general in its sense.
Thanks so much, Cecilia, for giving us this overview. And I know we're running through lots of information here and lots of different tools, links, and so on for you, the audience, to access. All of them you can also find in the expo area of this event, and I'm sure you'll be getting after the event as well. So I really encourage everyone to take this tool to really start assessing your performance and see where you're at when it comes to gender equality. The last area we wanted to mention to you is target setting and measuring progress. Also, as Kalila said in the beginning, it's not enough to have one thing here or there, but really to start taking action and measuring progress throughout. That's why we at the Global Compact started launching Target Gender Equality 3 years ago. really based also on what the Secretary General of the UN keeps telling us, that women keep being underrepresented across all boardrooms of business, all halls of power, and focusing on gender parity is also a high priority for the UN, getting our own house in order internally, their own board of the Global Compact as well, but also just a moral duty, a human rights imperative, and an operational necessity. We see lots of different researches coming out around the business case for gender equality and for diverse decision making, but also, of course, know about the human rights responsibility that it is. So that's why we started launching Target Gender Equality and really zooming in closer on setting and meeting ambitious targets for women's leadership. As we know, women's leadership also has a trickling effect on so many other areas of gender equality and sustainable development overall. And of course, this initiative also directly implements the women's empowerment principles that I mentioned to you in the beginning. By now, we have over 55 countries active in this initiative with over 1,500 companies participating, several of them represented here today in the panel as well. And here a picture of our network in Korea at their initiative launch some years ago. But we will be sharing the different links with you out there as well to ensure you can sign up in a country that you're representing and participate in this initiative in the future. Through this initiative, we've been seeing that 90% of past participants are actually setting these new targets or drafting new ones, as well as drafting action plans in order to see how to meet those targets. And also 80% of them have been telling us that they're planning on taking the Web's gender gap analysis tool that Cecilia just ran us through on a regular basis to measure their progress over time. But as also Kalila mentioned in the beginning, gender equality is not a numbers game. It's really not about hiring one woman, letting go of one man and replacing him. That's never going to help you get to sustainable and lasting change and a difference in the life of women and girls out there. But rather it's about abolishing systemic barriers, enabling women to access equal opportunities, and creating inclusive and supportive workplace cultures for everyone. So with that, here again, a quick summary of the three pieces we went through with the different links directly on this slide as well. On the last one, you also see the Web's transparency and accountability framework, which already is a document including lots of different KPIs you can already start using to track your own progress in order to really make sure you're serious about what you set out to do in your different commitments or policies out there. But I know it's always the most interesting to hear about real life experiences and really hear what's happening on the ground in different countries, different workplace cultures and organizations. What's the latest research out there about the topic? Which lessons have different organizations learned that you can already build on and learn from? That's why I'm really excited to be leading now a conversation with three representatives, and you see their headshots on the screen here. The first one is Mr. Mwangi Kitaiga, who is the managing director from the Kenya Women Finance Trust Bank. He's been at the bank for over 20 years and actually managed to bring it from a credit-only institution to a fully fledged microfinance bank that's truly focused on financial inclusion. And he's a member of the Global Compact Network in Kenya and very actively engaging with us for many years. Secondly, we have Professor Anita Bosch, who is a professor and chair of Women at Work at the University of Stellenbosch Business School in South Africa. During her research, she's been bringing out many different reports and thought leadership pieces focused on women on boards, equal pay, childcare, and much more. And she's even 2 times presented to the South African Parliament about her latest research. And we're really lucky to be able to count on her support in Tanzania. She's been for over 10 years working in senior management in different television and communication sector experiences, but really focused on changing workplace cultures and driving that cultural change throughout different organizations, offering leadership trainings, for example, looking at different biases in hiring systems and so on. And she's been a part of Target Gender Equality in Tanzania, so really excited to also have her with us here today. What I'll do now, though, is stop sharing my screen so that everyone sees the different panelists image is much clearer here, and start kicking us off with this panel discussion by asking each one of you to briefly introduce yourself, building on what I already said, and share with us why it was so important for you to be here today and speak up for gender equality. Maybe we'll get started with you, Anita.
Thank you very much, Elizabeth, and to the UN Global Compact, for inviting me. I think gender equality is central to my lived identity, and just knowing that being a woman in a workplace where usually we didn't fit in makes for one to understand that you're different. You're different from men, but you can contribute equally, and it's in that contribution that we have to find the answer, most probably guiding companies towards that. So for me, gender equality is a no-brainer, but I realize that it is extremely complex and especially difficult very often for smaller organizations to pay attention to. At least that's the assumption that's made. And I've dedicated my research career to finding ways for us to unearth the roadblocks and to find solutions for the issues that we face. So that's why I'm here today, to further that conversation with the public and make sure that we get to a level of understanding so that we can start moving forward to more sustainable solutions.
Thank you so much, Anita, and I agree with you. Gender equality is definitely a no-brainer, but not a no-brainer to find solutions that truly transform cultures. Next, over to you, Mwangi, to share with us why you're here today, why it's important for you to talk about gender equality.
Yeah, thank you very much, Elizabeth. And first of all, thank you very much for inviting us to participate in this forum. And I work for an organization that has been around for over 41 years, and which has advocating on women issues. And more so, why we are here is because we've been doing it for those 41 years. And we believe very strongly as an institution that women economic empowerment sorts half the problem. Because women can only be able to talk on their behalf and talk about girls in this world of ours if they are themselves economically empowered. Because economic empowered is the tool to negotiation, is the tool to political decision. You can only participate at the family level in decision making, the community, if you are economically empowered. We were formed many years ago, started initially doing everything, including advocacy and positioning women. And we split into two companies. That is what we call ENA, initially our founding institution, which does positioning and advocacy for women. And the bank, the Women Bank, went off to deal with economic empowerment and be able to position women in their rightful position. And we believe very strongly that if we do that, then half the problem is already solved. We have branches across the whole country, and we work with about 800,000 women who 80% are based in the rural area, and 55% of our employees are women. There is the only place that women can discriminate men. And we feel strongly that's the way to deal with it. And we hope that we can be able to do that across the world and be able to position women, because without the women, then we are losing half the population in the economic forum. Otherwise, that's why we are here, because we believe in what we do.
Thank you so much for outlining that. And I think it also truly speaks to what Kalila mentioned in the beginning. We don't have to have these conversations only at headquarters in capitals around the world, but truly bring them to all different areas in the country. And it's great to hear that you're just doing that, empowering women also in rural areas and throughout. Next, over to you, Tika. It's great for you to join us today. Many thanks. I wanted to ask you as well, why is it important for you to speak up for gender equality?
Okay, thank you so much, Elizabeth and the team. At my end, basing on the fact that traditionally that most women are accounted that really are not confident or can really not shine up to manage a number of activities within the societies. So for me, I think this is a critical or a very fruitful session for me to share exactly what really we need to do as businesses, not only that, also to empower when it comes to gender equality, so that we can really eradicate whatever the perception that have been implanted traditionally or socially, that women can really not hold positions, can really not participate in economic activities, cannot really speak out. So this is the only platform that we can really work around. Though in one way or another, we also need to be very cautious, because you understand now the key focus is mostly on trying to empower women. But how do we empower, and what exactly are we infusing to most women? Because if we really don't take it in a very good ways, we might find that instead of reaching the target of empowering women, but we create a certain base which will, if it's not well communicated, might lead to something else, which will not be a positive aspect of it. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Tika. And I think also goes back to what Anita just mentioned before. It's not an easy solution. Many different areas have backlash or other types of trickling effects we might not anticipate. So it really needs all genders to be on board to tackle perceptions in society and stereotypes out there that underlie everything we do, basically. But with that, I have a few more questions for the panel here, and I'll start with Anita. As I mentioned to you before, to our audience here, Anita has been supporting target gender equality in South Africa for the second year now. So truly grateful for your support. And I think it would be great to hear for everyone why you believe target setting is so important for gender equality. And where do you even get started if you haven't set any types of targets for gender equality in your organization before? What have you observed so far, and what's your take on it?
Yes, and I think, target setting really comes at the end of the day, it becomes an action tactic that we employ once, very often if we think about the larger structures of organizations, once a board commits to diversity. And if at board level, there really is this commitment to say, we are interested in broadening our talent base and including as many voices as possible, as many talented individuals, then, that decision is made and it's driven from the top. There are many organizations, though, where boards just think that they're serving the shareholder, and by virtue of that, they're not looking at other stakeholders within the larger sustainability ecosystem. And we all know that sustainability consists of many things, such as, nature and the ecology and so forth, but we often forget about the social aspect to it, and women fit in there. So thinking about targets, this is one of the most effective tools to see whether you're moving anywhere and to keep yourself in check as well. If you just think about your own life and the things that you might want to do personally, without a particular target, it often slides. And so target setting becomes the way in which we discipline ourselves to move forward. The organizations that have not set up targets before need to think very carefully about the outcome that they want to achieve, and speak about gender equality and their understanding. Does it mean 50-50? Is that what they're chasing? Are they thinking about equality as more a representative sample of women according to particular other indicators, or that there should be a majority women, that perhaps in the society there are more women than men, or more women graduates available, depending on the industry that they're at? So I think it's quite important for organizations to also do an external evaluation of the context in which they're operating, the realities of the talent supply, the realities of what it is that they're wishing to achieve, and then formulate those targets according to those goals. and set them out, and then have, again, the carrot and stick principle of setting out rewards for achieving those, but then also consequences when we don't meet our targets. And I think that in a holistic system helps us to drive targets with an understanding of not saying it's because the UN Global Compact says it's a good thing, but rather to say what is good for our company, for our industry, where we're located and contextually relevant. And therefore we believe in it, and then setting those targets accordingly.
Thank you so much for outlining that, Anita. Yeah, it really resonates with me what you're saying in terms of we're setting targets for anything we're serious about, whether it's financial performance or a personal target on career goal or something very personal like losing weight or any type of things, activities you're doing throughout your life. So it should just come naturally that also for gender equality, if we're truly serious about it, we will set business targets and holistic action plans to ensure progress actually happens. Also, at your organization in Mwangi, you're definitely serious about gender equality, as the slogan of your organization even is banking for women. So I wanted to ask you what you actually mean by that slogan. Why do you think offering gender-sensitive services is important? And how do you get started in developing them? What's your lessons learned from your organization?
Thank you very much. Yeah, the slogan of our institution is banking on women, and but our focus is the family. We focus on the family, but we use the woman as the entry point because we believe that the unit to be able to have economic development in any country is the family unit. But the family unit has many ways of entering into it, and we chose that the woman is the best way to enter that family. So we are banking on women. That is not just banking in terms of money, but banking in terms of depending on them and relying on them to actually be the change agent that we are looking at. The change that we are looking to achieve, we want to achieve it through women. And we have found it's quite easy, and we are able to meet the many targets, ideas that we have, including placing women at the center of the family, placing them at the center of the country, the economy, the politics, and just making sure that women have a say. And like I had just mentioned, for us as an institution, 55% of our employees are women, and that's logical because 52% of Kenyan are women. So it's an issue. It's not an issue of just talking about inclusion and tokenism. Is an issue of making sure that you do what needs to be done, because when we take girls to school, they perform as good as boys. So at what point do we find that in the workplace we have higher representation of men and lower representation of women? So what is going wrong at that point? So we deliberate it all the way from the board level, that we position women in a way that they are able to participate, and their children can also be able to participate, and the girls are put in the rightful place. So we do this through many ways, including on the product offering, our network of branches, and making sure that we do not discriminate men. Men are included, but then for us to finance a business, we want to see where the wife is. For us to finance a company, we want to see what is the loan women are bringing that company. Do they have ownership? And we have demonstrated it ourselves, because if you look at our company, you find that we, at the ownership level, we have also brought in women, so that it's not just a question of service delivery, it's even giving women ownership and decision making, so that we are not only empowering them at service delivery level, they are also participating at decision making level. So it's a whole ecosystem, and we've done this for over 41 years. So we don't know how to do anything else. We do it because this is our business, and we do it that way. And when we get out in the workplace, in the marketplace, we do not discriminate men, but we insist on women participation, and not tokenism, but real participation, where they are sitting in the decision-making table, and where their voice can be heard, and their ideas can be considered. Yeah.
Thank you so much. I think the main point here really resonating with me is also recognizing women as change agents, as change makers, while not discriminating against any other genders and really making sure everyone is equally included at the table. Tika, I'd like to now pass it over to you and also hear from you. What are your different priorities when it comes to gender equality at your organization? How did you get started with them? And is there maybe some lessons learned that you can share with us already?
Okay, thank you so much. Us as multi-choice, gender equality is part and parcel of our key priorities. We even have a business target that we really need to make sure that we work around diversity. So, and it started from the EXCO level, because anything in any business needs to start from the EXCO level. So in so many years, we have come to have a leadership team, and most of the leaders, they are male leaders. So how did we arrive where we are? We started with how are we going to assist the female staff to make sure that they're really well equipped when it comes to leadership skills. So for about 3 years, we had a very clear kind of development initiative, programs that people are enrolled to, so that they can really enhance their skills when it comes to leadership. And it started from the EXCO level, because we really believe that if that comes from the EXCO part of it, it will also infuse to other lower levels. So we started recruiting people from the senior leadership aspect of it, like the CEOs and the managing directors who are females, and they really due to that, they really made to achieve a number of targets. So that also made us to be a very good preference that to look at. And that also infused into the lower levels, where we also had a number of programs that we really inserted, and we had a target around it. How many female staff did they really need to be enrolled to leadership programs? How many staff they really need to be given projects to manage? So this also, and also we exposed a lot of females to a number of activities, whether internally or externally. So that really made us to be where we are. As now our target is to reach 50-50, but now we are sitting at, like MultiChoice Tanzania, we're sitting a percentage of 49-51. So that also gives us to be, we are somehow getting there. And the key focus around it is when you prioritize anything, you should also have a look, where do you want to go? Not reaching the percentage as I've mentioned before, but exactly in which aspect are you really empowering this female staff. So that is what we make it not only a priority of making that we have the percentage, but the key priority is to make sure that we really increase the percentage of female leaders within the business.
Thank you so much, Tika, and congratulations for setting those ambitious targets and the progress you already made. And as you said, even though it's targets for top leadership, it then leads to targets for every single aspect underneath it, really looking at all practices and policies out there across the different levels within the organization and activities taken on. So I think that was truly insightful for the audience to hear how it works in practice. Let's now dig a little bit deeper, so to say, and zoom in on childcare, as that's actually one of the recent pieces of the Women at Work research that Anita has been focusing on. And you mentioned childcare as an enabler of women's economic participation. So we wanted to ask you, what exactly do you mean by that, Anita? And can you maybe share some tips of how employers can support working parents by driving childcare related efforts?
Yes, there's womensreport.africa is available for free download, and there I've been working with this particular publication for 12 years now. The Women's Report on Women's Economic Enablement took the idea of childcare as one of the ways in which women can be freed up to make their time available for income earning work, paid work, but then also perhaps even use the skills of teaching and looking after children as a way of earning income. And so, looking at that both ways, so that they are freed up and can then, earn an income, bring that back to the family, and be economically productive. What we have also suggested in previous years is how you've alluded to employers can help other women towards childcare. And there's a number of suggestions there. For the one that usually employers get stuck on and often cannot execute on because it can be quite expensive is on-site facilities. And usually smaller employers cannot offer that, but there are a number of employers that have used on-site childcare facilities, especially for very young children up to the age of 3, as a way of attracting and retaining really excellent talent. And by the way, what we find is that those employers actually attract and retain then men as well, people with families, individuals, any type of family that requires childcare for young children. The second way in which employers can consider childcare if they cannot offer on-site childcare is to link the employees to facilities that do offer solid and quality childcare. For instance, by examining these facilities and then paying or reserving for a number of places at a childcare facility and negotiating discounts for the employees at these facilities or access at these facilities for their employees. And that is a way in which an employer doesn't have to take on-site care, but can actually step in and facilitate various forms that employees do get access. There's also, for some countries where there are income tax type support and so forth, exemptions and so on, employers can also step in and ensure that employees are aware of these advantages and then encourage the employees to make use of these opportunities, especially where tax breaks come into play. And then one of the last ones would be a type of a referral service around what makes for good childcare choices and so forth. But it really does start with the idea that employers must understand the family setup of their employees and therefore be able to deliver on some of these services.
Thank you, Anita. We'll definitely also make sure the audience receives the different links to your research you're mentioning, as I know there's so many different practical points as you just outlined as well. I think throughout the whole Target Gender Equality program, we often get told companies realize they don't only have a gender equality gap, but actually a maternity gap, realizing women don't come back after maternity leave as they are not supported enough in the workplace. And also what you mentioned really relates to what Mwangi was saying before around the family unit and making sure that is something that everyone recognizes truly relates to the business and is the place to get started to really ensure everyone gets the support they need. Of course, also the women's empowerment principles touch upon childcare and support for working parents, as that's covered by the different principles and the dimensions. So I wanted to pass the next question back to you, Mwangi, as your organization actually became a signatory to the women's empowerment principles last year. So I wanted to ask you why it was important to you to make this high-level commitment, despite or especially in times where we are confronted with so many different crises.
Okay, thank you very much. And we are actually very happy to become signatories. In fact, we should have joined a little earlier, because all that we do is about women empowerment, and we've been doing it for many years. I think we were a little late to commit ourselves. But why I would say we took that decision, one is that we wanted a forum where we can be able to participate and be, run what is going on in the areas of women empowerment, because we know that we've been doing it, but we are not so sure that we are doing it the best way. We do it in the way we think that should be done, and we believe that we will be able to learn a lot. And we are also able to showcase what we do and hear other people's view in terms of how we are doing it and what can be improved. And at the same time, give ourselves some level of accountability. Because, you know, when you are running a bank, it's very easy to have a mission drift, because sometimes as you take in new shareholders, people may come with different views in terms of things that will bring more profitability and may drift you from your mission, and which may end up leading to a situation where we lose what initially we were formed to do by the women who set this institution 41 years ago. So we felt it's good to have a place where we can place a commitment which is approved at the board level that can be changed. And if it were to be changed, then really it would have to be made in a very fundamental way, and then we would have to look at other mitigating factors. The other issue was also to help us in benchmark globally, because we were doing it. In Kenya, we are the only microfinance bank actually that focuses on women only. And we thought that the globe has more to offer for us. And so if we are able to place ourselves in a global view, then we can be able to benchmark with other people who are doing what we do. And of course, on the other side, and the most important, is to add a voice to this discussion. We are talking about women empowerment. We are talking about financial inclusion. How do we go about it globally, so that this battle is not only won from one corner, but we would like to have many institutions across Africa and across the world which are doing exactly what we are doing, and even doing it much better. So it was more for us a confirmation that what we are doing is the correct thing, and what we are doing, it has areas of improvement, and what we need to improve, can we be able to gain it from the global, from the group, and be able to understand what other people are doing across the world. Yeah.
Thank you so much for outlining that so important point and recognizing that even though you and your leadership team right now really see gender equality as a priority, recognizing maybe that might change in the future as dynamics change, other people come in and out, and the importance of this so public commitment to hold yourselves accountable and showcase to society that you are serious about gender equality and keeping it up over the next years and generations to come. Tika, what you also already mentioned in the beginning was the stereotypes and perceptions, as of course you in the media and entertainment industry have this huge opportunity to tackle gender-based stereotypes and instead promote positive and inclusive images and language of women and girls. So I wanted to ask you, how exactly have you been doing just that, and what are the lessons that you have learned from it? I think it's also something Kalila mentioned in the beginning, really leveraging the media to bring the right communication across, as that's the content that especially the younger generation and many others out there view on a daily basis.
Okay, yeah, from my end, basing the fact that we are for us, we even come across a number of programs that really worked around in making sure that speaks on empowering women, where we also had some of our graduates from the Multi-Choice Talent Factory, which have been really well groomed when it comes to female making, where they came up with documentaries and films around number of showcases that speaks about empowering, where we had a program that was channeled like 2 years back, that a film that speaks of how do we need to empower girls and empower women in a number of activities, which had a name as Ndeke. And this is more specifically was speaking what are the things that societies need to do to make sure that they really eradicate discrimination to girls and women, and how can women and girls be uplifted from where they are and build confidence when it comes to a number of issues within the societies. Because we know in most of the traditions in Africa, you even find whenever you have even a family gathering, female or women are not really being given a chance to express themselves, or to even there are times that they can really even not own land. So these movies really spoke about how do we need to look at in a different angle in making sure that we have equality between the two genders. And not only that, at the business, we also had our gender-based violence program, which was really a big initiative within the businesses. So that really speaks of making sure that whenever that you give a chance to a female staff, it really means a lot, and it really works it really push a bigger part when it comes to meeting the strategic objective. So how do you really need to push female to get out of their shells? You really need to give them a chance. You really need to understand them. And that comes where we also, within the same program, we came with a program like the mental health programs, where you really need to understand what exactly have they gone through and really made them not to show up where they are. So these programs really, even the film that we had around empowering women, it really made a bigger impact. And we are really pushing them so that we can really reach to where we really want to reach as the business when it comes to empowering and pushing around gender equality.
Great, thank you, Chike. Yeah, summarizing here, so it's really not only about ensuring there's no negative stereotypes out there, but creating this new content and educating, making sure you're pushing the right messages, and then making sure they reach the people that need to hear them. Also the individual women within your company, to ensure once they are in certain positions, they're equipped to really make their voices heard and take up the seat that they so deserve. I have 3 last questions here, one for each of you, to help us unpack a few of these different arguments of resistance, excuses, if you want to call them that we often hear out there from companies, individuals or so, that maybe are a little bit more resistant or hesitant around engaging on gender equality. So one thing we often hear, Anita, is that despite tracking, despite really trying the best they can, they're not seeing that business a case around gender equality investments. They're not seeing that payoff on the different KPIs that you, for example, mentioned when it comes to childcare before. So how would you respond to a company that tells you they tried, but they're not seeing any benefits? How should they proceed?
Well, being a researcher, one always works with the measures that are being used. And I think one of the first things is if we're measuring from a baseline of how the structures are structured at the moment, and trying to reach outcomes that meet or sort of echo what's happening at the moment, there's already a fundamental problem. I think the second thing is, even before that, as I think it's the wrong question to be asking. We don't ask often whether it's, in fact, we don't ask ever, whether the men that are around the table make for a business case to sit around the table. So I think the question is a wrong question to ask and to start off with. This is a human rights and a human dignity issue. I'm sure Mwangi can give us many examples of why their bank actually exists and thrives on women working there, which would make a great business case. But the point is, after all, ask the right question from the beginning and see to it that your measures actually measure something that's meaningful towards human dignity and not towards whatever it is that you're thinking the business case should be. That would be my brief answer to that.
Thank you, Anita. And of course, thanks for reminding us of the human rights imperative and really measuring what counts and what matters to make progress towards the goals we want to achieve, towards sustainable development, and not just measuring for the sake of it to try to fill some numbers out there or some business case that you're trying to come up with. I have a question for you, Mwangi, around how you would respond if a company or an individual tells you that they do not have the money or human resources to focus on gender equality. How would you respond to that argument?
Thank you, Elizabeth. First of all, I would find that very strange because, what are we talking about? We are talking about human beings. this country, especially our country, 52% of the population are women. So they are the majority. So they can even decide, actually, we need to decide one day that we have a woman's president in Kenya. So the issue of talking about women through tokenism, as if we need some actions to bring them around the table, actually should not even be there at all. But for us, what I believe should be done is to mainstream women issues, put them at the center stage, make them part of our business. And women and men are equal. There's nothing that women need to be given special favors. They only need to be given opportunities. And like Anita has said, the biggest maybe challenge women have when they are at the childbearing age is that they have competing interests to look after the family, which is a fundamental human issue. You can imagine a world without women participating, there would be no population. So we can't punish them for the very thing that they do to keep the human race going on. So for us, we have no apologies in doing what we do. And I mentioned earlier that 55% of our employees are women. We do it deliberately, but we do not give them any small things, any gifts. We put them in the middle there, give them an opportunity and make sure that they are able to participate like everybody else. At our board level, 67% of our board is women. And the share of our board is a woman. And our top management, 46% are women. And that's the way it is supposed to be. The ownership of the company, 63% of the company is owned by women. And it's functioning. So I do not actually understand why people struggle with doing what is correct. It is much harder to do what is wrong than to do what is correct. So actually, you have to put special effort to discriminate women and not have them in the right place in this group. So actually, it takes more effort to discriminate women against men. So anybody who is doing it is spending money, time, and they are spending their time and money badly. So I would say mainstream, don't introduce tokenism. Let's not give women special favors. Let them compete, but fairly. When a woman goes on maternity leave, when she comes back, take cognizance of the fact that she was not there. And if she is performing 70% and the man 100, she would be performing 150% much higher than the man. So at that point, we have to make deliberate decision by having decisions at the board level and passing policies that are able to empower women. And it's got to be done at the workplace and at the marketplace. And once we do that, everything else falls in place. So for me, I do not struggle with it because it really doesn't matter. I do what I know is the correct thing to do.
Thank you so much. Really powerful and completely agree. Of course, it's not about tokenism. It's not about ticking off a box and say we're doing gender equality or giving a gracious gift to women out there, but rather it is their right. They're half of the population. So of course they should be half of anything we're doing at the workplace, in the marketplace, or in our economic activities. This was a really great message. Thank you, Mwangi. And I have a last question here for Tika as well. As another point we're often hearing is we can't focus on gender equality because that would be reverse discrimination and we would offend our male employees, our male workforce. How would you respond to such a statement?
Okay, I think as what Mwangi has mentioned, it's not about discriminating male. It's only a matter that we are trying to campaign around gender empowerment and pushing women, but merit should be part and parcel. So if you really do it in a very correct way, without any favoritism, and you stick on merits in whatever that you have, when it comes to recruitment, when it comes to assigning to projects, whenever that you really want something to be done, obvious that matter of male staff feeling that they're really discriminated will not be there because you'll not be biased, but you'll stick on merits and what is the best way to do. Yeah.
Great, thank you. It's exactly about taking out the bias of existing systems to ensure they actually don't discriminate. So it's, as also Mwangi was saying before, what you just built on, discriminating against women was actually harder than not discriminating. So we should just bring out the bias across every single system and part of the company. We are on time here, so we have to wrap up the panel. Unfortunately, I know there's many other points you could have and wanted to bring across, and I hope we have another opportunity to do that soon. But I really just wanted to give a very great thanks to all of you, not only for being with us here today, Anita, Mwangi, and Tike, but for the amazing work you are doing in your organizations, really mainstreaming gender equality across everything we're doing. We have another call to action here to close us off, but I believe the organizers, the producers, wanted to bring in a quick 2-minute break. So with that, I'll pass it back to Sabang to keep us updated on the progress of the session, and then please stay tuned for closing remarks from another company leader here and a final call to action to wrap all the different points made here today all together. So thank you, Anita, Mwangi, and Tike, and Sabang, over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Elizabeth, and we appreciate your panel as well that enabled rigorous conversations regarding gender equality in the global context. And with that, I wish you all the best, and please know that your insights are definitely going to be considered in our policy practices and so forth. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you.